This episode of Instant Speed is brought to you by TCG Player. Uprising is the newest draftable set of Flesh and Blood available for sale on June 24th, filled with fiery ninja attacks, summoning phoenix flames, invoking fierce dragons, or flinging chilling arcane damage towards unsuspecting opponents. This latest set is a high-powered addition to the world of Wraith. Kickstart your journey with the legendary Dragon Collection, exclusive to TCG Player, and score 2 boxes of Uprising, all 3 unique dragon-themed sleeves, an exclusive full art promo card, and the sleek collector box. These bundles will sell out fast and are only available at TCG Player. Don't get mired by frostbite. Use the link in the description and pick up yours before the draconic fire burns up your opportunity to own this exclusive collection. Use the links in the description to support the podcast and pick up your boxes of Uprising or score that exclusive bundle before they turn to ash. This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 36, brought to you by FABDB.net, your premier source for deck building tools, collection management, simulated booster drafting, and oh boy, Uprising is around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. I just got back from Las Vegas, Nevada, where I got to play in the Uprising Premiere. What an amazing event. The cards are awesome. So if you want to practice those simulated booster drafting, if you want to go ahead and make some of those decks, FABDB.net is the place to go. Upgrade your account. You will not regret it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 36. Our guest today is none other than Mr. James White. I'm not going to waste time with too much news because we want to get to the goodness that is the creator of Flesh and Blood. But I got to say thank you again to our Patreon members. Thank you very much to our T3s. That would be Logan P., Josh L., Static Panic, Caleb, Michael H., Ryan K., Kirk B., Tom R., Alaric C., Roger, and Andy T. You guys are awesome. So thank you so much. If you want to support the podcast for as little as $1 a month, you can go ahead and give us a pat on the back. Lots of cool perks. Go to patreon.com/instantspeedpod. Friends, our guest today is Mr. James White. All the concerns, gloves are off. Let's get to it. All right, you heard me talk about it. I was in Las Vegas, and going on all around the world this past weekend was the Uprising Premiere event. We got our hands, our grubby little mitts on all of the cool Uprising cards. I played a lot of FI, and it was awesome. I got absolutely dunked on by Icelander in one of my matches, but dear goodness me, you want to see these cards in action. So why don't you go to fabdb.net, upgrade your account to premium, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you, you will not regret it. Head on over there, go take a look at all the cool cards, start theory crafting, put stuff together. It is the place to be. Again, fabdb.net. You will not regret it. The Instant Speed Podcast is so honored to welcome back a man who needs no introduction, but we're gonna give it to him anyways because, well, frankly, it's just part of the package deal. And Mr. James White, the creator of Flesh and Blood, and James, my man, I mean, you're on the show now. A little less hair, but a lot wiser as we just kind of came off of the Pro Tour. So how you feeling? What's good, man? Like, talk to me, brother.
Dude, I'm feeling fantastic. We're pumped up here. Look, coming off the incredible highs of the Pro Tour, it exceeded all expectations. To be honest, just an incredible turnout. And look, we had to come back down to ground in New Zealand, find our feet again, and just get back in the groove. On our next product. Obviously, we've had the Uprising launch as well, which has been like an incredibly successful marketing campaign, and just so much love from the community towards Uprising, which has been fantastic to see. So grateful for all the content creators that partnered with us to do the previous season, and I think it was our best one yet. So there was that, and obviously back in the tank, making the next product, and things are looking good, man. We're feeling good here.
Oh, well, everybody else is feeling good. Again, coming back from Las Vegas just recently, I arrived home yesterday, and you got that post-event depression that everyone's kind of feeling, just kind of itching, but we've got pre-releases coming this weekend, so everybody's super excited. But let's just wheel it back a little bit to the Pro Tour. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Pro Tour. It was essentially the biggest event up until that point. It was what everything has been worked for, and a lot of the the sentiment of everybody is the realization that, hey, this is something that James has essentially been working for 8-9 years. It is this culmination to this event. So in your eyes, you mentioned that it was a great event, but was it a success in your estimation, the Pro Tour in New Jersey? How would you evaluate that event overall?
Yeah, it exceeded expectations when we're looking at the event weekend as a whole. I mean, like there's only a very small number of things which were upsetting. One of them being that we had to turn people away who had travelled from near and far because there literally wasn't a table or chair left in the venue. But I would say that pre-registrations were open for about 3 months. So if you are looking to come to Lille or any of the future big events like the World Champs, like please do pre-register to lock in your spot. But yeah, look, the Pro Tour, 25 countries represented, 7 countries in the top 8. Just some incredible games played out on stream. Just the diversity of people there was incredible. Just the love for the game and support for the community and for each other that was just radiating throughout the room was just absolutely incredible. It was very humbling, very touching just to be part of that and to have that opportunity to just be on the ground and connect with the fans and hear the stories, man. Just so many incredible stories about how Flesh and Blood has brought people together and forged new friendships and opened new doors for people and helped them get through COVID and just like so many different stories. And pretty much the entire weekend, all I did was just talk to people. So I heard a lot of stories, and it was really touching just to see how this game has become more than a game. It's become a really important part of people's lives.
That's great. And you being there was a major part of that. And you and I had, we had a lot of time just privately as well as just amidst everybody. And one of the things that you mentioned to me was that after, on that third day, I mean, there's that picture that I tweeted out of just that you taking in the final match. And a lot of people are like, man, like James looks wiped. And you were, because you were out there signing like crazy, meeting people. And you mentioned to me, how you're not used to this necessarily. This is not something that you're necessarily accustomed to. You're possibly naturally an introvert. Is this your first snapshot of, hey, like life has changed, things are different, I'm famous now amidst this community, amidst this genre, amidst this sort of thing? It's awkward to say, trust me, I know, because when people come up to me at events and they're like, hey, can you sign like my deck box for my playmat? I'm like, why? Like it's just, I'm like, dude, I'm just like everybody else. But is this something that you've had to digest and maybe come to terms with, that you're no longer just Joe Schmo, you're James White, the creator of Flesh and Blood?
Well, I just look at myself as just a regular old gamer, to be honest. I'm just a dude who likes to play games and took it a little bit too far. And here we are. Um, but yeah, I think just I was just wiped out at Pro Tour. As you said, it was very overwhelming. I was just pretty much running on adrenaline the whole weekend. But I think it is really important just to be out there and connected with the community and with the fans. And uh, I mean, probably one of the other things that I wish could be different about the Pro Tour is that I just had more time to give to the fans. Um, and I could have spent more time with each person and just had a deeper conversation or a longer moment with them. But I mean, as you saw, like it was immense the amount of people that just wanted to have a chat with me and share their stories and take their photos, get things signed. And look, I hope I did my best to honor and respect all of the fans that were there and wanted to come and meet me. And I'll continue to do the same at other big events in the future. With I'll be at Lille and the World Championship later this year. And it means a lot to me. But I think it's important to stay humble, and maybe that's a very New Zealand thing as well. We're quite down to earth people down here, and but yeah, it was kind of out of my comfort zone. But I did my best to step up and just put myself out there. And yeah, like I've said many times, doing your best is all you can ever do. So
It's essentially just putting in the effort. And what a lot of people are maybe not understanding is the fact that I think you're only slated to maybe sign cards for about an hour or two a day, which essentially stretched out to sometimes 4 or 5 to accommodate everybody. And so big ups to
I
you
think
again.
it was more like all day. it was more like from the minute I walked in the door until we left in the evening. That was pretty much what it became, and that was cool. I was fine with that.
It was like you're running for president. It was just you're coming in there and everybody's just like, sign this, kiss this baby, do this, endorse the like it was incredible. And again, thank you so much. And what another little tidbit that people don't understand is that at the end of it all, after Sunday, when I had asked you, I think once I said, listen, if you do get a moment, I have a few things I'd like for you to sign for me, and it just never came to it. And at the end of Sunday, as we're all walking away, you came and you found me, and you're like, hey, punk, get over here. I'm not signing one more damn thing except for you. And then you came and you signed my cards. And so that's a nice little, means a lot to me. So I do appreciate that. And you do care, and it showed, because for 9 to 10 hours a day, you were on, and it's not easy. And sometimes, especially for somebody who's the focal point when you don't want to be, when the focal point should be the gameplay, there you are, and just giving back. And that means a lot. So thank you for that. And
You're very welcome. No, I see that I would, and you're very welcome. I had to do it. One thing I would just say on this topic, though, like, like I might be the guy who's sort of up there on the center stage and getting all the, adoration or whatever, but I do want to say that, like, what happened in New Jersey is the culmination of the work of many, many people at Legend Story Studios. And like, I, what what I see New Jersey sort of really symbolizing is the validation of a lot of work from a lot of people to create what Flesh and Blood is. And I do want to acknowledge I have a fantastic team of people around me. Flesh and Blood would not be what it is without the brilliant people who make up Legend Story Studios, from our game developers to our creative team, to our writers, to the people who are organizing these OP events, to the people who are pushing the content out on our website, and which is really significant for building those communities and getting those stories told on a day by day basis. Um, even just to the people who are in our operations department, getting product to wherever it needs to be in the world. Like, there's just a lot of moving parts to make Legend Story Studios hum, and to get Fish and Blood out to the fans, and to support them with organized play, and through that whole process of product creation. And so yeah, I do just want to take a minute to just acknowledge that it's not just about me. I might be the guy who's under the limelight, but there's a lot of people at Legend Story Studios who do deserve to have just as much credit and um, appreciation from the community as well.
many of whom I've met and are excellent people and hard-working people. So cheers to them for sure. Next bit here before we get into the the little bit of the harder stuff, because when I tweeted out and put out the word that you were going to be on the podcast, and I think I received over 150 questions. So we're not going to get to all of them by any means, but we're going to get to the nitty gritty shortly. But we just want to talk real quickly about the Uprising Premiere, which I've been to premieres or I've been to releases and such like that, and many of them have felt merely as just outlets to get your hands on the product ahead of schedule. This didn't feel like that. This truly felt like a celebration. How did you look to how did you want to envision something like the Uprising premiere? I wasn't at the Tales of Aria premiere, but I was at this one, and that's the vibe I got, and that's the vibe that I felt was felt by most others around me, that the uprising aspect of it, the gameplay, the acquiring the cards, having them in your hands was just, secondary to the fact that we're all here to get the next chapter of what we love so much. Was that the mission? Was the mission for these premiere events to be more celebratory, or were they more to be more gameplay oriented?
Absolutely, it's about the celebration. I mean, that's why the world premiere itself is like on the Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and then we put a calling, with the Team Blitz format over the actual weekend, because first of all, we don't want to undermine the pre-releases which are running all across the world this weekend. Like, we want fans getting into stores across the world to play pre-release this weekend, and not just like get their entire fix at the world premiere. So like, I hope that it served as sort of like a taster of what Uprising is, and get that excitement and that spread across the world, that Uprising is a fantastic product to play seal deck and booster draft with, and then like get into the stores and actually play more of it, or maybe play for the first time this weekend if you didn't get to one of the world premieres. But it's absolutely supposed to be a celebration, and also like tying into dragon theme of Uprising. Honoring the three legendary dragons, and for each of those legendary dragons to be tied to the three different territories that we're running these events around the world, and just like really pull strongly towards those themes. And dude, like looking at the photos that were coming in from over the weekend, it was incredible. Like seeing people turning up to Las Vegas, and I think maybe in Sydney as well, like actually cosplaying as Dromai and Fire. Like, how fast do these people work to make these costumes? Like, that's incredible. Um,
The,
so yeah, it's
I met
great to see
Fi.
the community spirit just like yeah, rallying around to like you say, celebrate the occasion more than just like you know get the product and yeah, like it was great. I would say that the world premieres were a fantastic success.
The format of the calling events were Team Blitz, and I think that I can speak for many people that this was, at least for myself, a pleasant surprise. As not as a non-competitor, as a competitive player who just plays in mid-tier events, playing in my first ever calling, believe it or not, was a Blitz event, and Blitz was never my favorite, but being in a team environment, it made it so much more enjoyable. And even somebody, for instance, like Tarek Patel, the U.S. national champion, he said, he's like, listen, it's not a question, but please tell James that team events, please make them a more regular thing. And I have to echo that statement as somebody who was flanked by great human beings. People like my teammates were Rick from BCW and Doa, aka Eric Longquist. Those were my teammates, and it's not like we're sharks in the field, but we had such a great time just practicing, having the dynamic, and meeting the other teams. And the teams that were there were just as bonded. There were themes, there was thematic teams, there was the all brute team, there was the this, there was the that, and is this going to be something that was this kind of like a sort of a taste test to see if this was a successful event, a format that can really be sustainable for future callings, or was it already on the docket that Team Blitz is here to stay? Are team events something that moving forward you guys are going to dig into more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that team formats are um, they're a lot of fun, and it really just calls to the essence of what Flesh and Blood is about, which is people coming together, grabbing a couple of buddies and going on a road trip together. Like that's what we're all about. So it really aligns strongly with our philosophy, and I think that when you pair it up with something like the world premiere, it was very intentional that we chose a teams format to pair up with the world premiere, just to bring more of that celebratory, like social fun type aspect to it. Like, oh, it's a calling, and there's like prize money, and there's gold legendaries or whatever, and it's it is a competitive level event. But as soon as you make it about teams, it does just sort of take that edge off the level of just like cutthroat, competitiveness, I think. And so yes, I do think that it has a place, both for Team Blitz and for Team Seal Deck as well. We have done that in the past in New Zealand as well, like some quite big Team Sealed events. As like the evening before the calling, we did it in Auckland a little while back. It was very 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 well received and popular. So yeah, you can expect more teams events in the future.
That's good news. And as many people were at Premiere, there was many more who could not make it. And this was a concern that was echoed by many of the people who sent in questions, was that it was more of a concern moving forward for just being able to plan around these major events. And the concern was not necessarily how many events are being planned. It's just that we need more time. When it comes to just organizing things. Digital clients allow you to just plug in from the home. There's no big deal. But when it comes to Vegas, when it comes to going around the world, knowing when these events are well ahead of time, is this something that you guys are actively working on? Because I believe that the community is definitely aching for lead time on this to get the logistics done and just decide it's plausible, it's not plausible. Here's the location, here's the date, well and ahead. Is this something that you guys are actively trying to improve?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've heard the feedback, and like these things happen not because we're like, hey, we're only going to give people like 6 weeks notice. Like that's our strategy to make it difficult for people. Like, of course not, but just sometimes the way that sort of we've come out of COVID and event availability and other like just challenges and pressures, like it's just put us in the spot where we've been at this moment in time, and it's absolutely intention to give way more visibility and runway on when the events are going to be, so people can plan. Like, people are busy, they've got families, they've got jobs, they need to book travel and time off work and arrange it, with their spouses or whatever, like to make these things happen. So yeah, we understand it, and we will be giving more lead time going forward.
That's good, and we definitely appreciate that. And some other games and such offer roadmaps. Like it's usually in January or late December. They'll be like, here's what's going on during the year. And I understand that that's not necessarily the most plausible approach when you need to lock down venues and travel around. But is a roadmap something that can potentially be on the radar? How far out are you guys able to plan something along this line? Is LSS able to give us, at least the majors, like the Pro Tours and Worlds? Is that something that you guys are able to lock down and really, communicate as early as January for a particular year?
I think that that's something that we need to be working towards. Like, yeah, we're a small company that's growing very fast as well, and with that, like, our team is growing very quickly, and as we bring on more experts in these different areas, like, and we're able to resource up, we'll be able to start doing these things to a higher standard, or with more like lead time, for example, with these events. It's just that is one of the constraints. It's just like manpower. It's really, really, really hard putting on a global series of premier events. So look, that's just being honest with you. That's been one of our constraints up until this point of time. Is um, we just need to resource up our organized play team so that we can get further ahead of the eight ball in this area. So yeah, we are getting there. And look, Legends Race Shooters has some incredible people around me, and there's more joining us all of the time. And as we continue to invest into areas like organized play, which is obviously just a critical, fundamental part of what the Flesh and Blood experience is, I think that you'll see us doing a better job in many areas.
Wonderful. Last time we spoke here, we were discussing the shift away from first edition to and unlimited, the quote unquote FAB 2.0, which kind of took off like wildfire. Frankly, the whole. Can I ask you something real quickly? You mentioned FAB 2.0 on this show, and that people kind of ran with that. And then there was the announcement of quote unquote FAB 2.0. Was it always FAB 2.0, or did you guys just decide to call it FAB 2.0 after people started referring to the interview that we had the first time?
It really was because of the interview. Like, it just
Okay.
people picked it up and ran with it. So I was like, yeah, let's lean into this.
Yeah, I love it because people were like, "No, there's a lot to this." Like, there's clearly. I'm like, I think that it was just kind of a throwaway statement that you guys are just kind of pumping up. So I'm glad that was cleared up.
I mean, for me, it was always like Fab Phase 2, but Fab 2.0 is just cooler, and the community picked it up and ran with it. So yeah, just thank you, Matt, for bringing that one to life.
Woo, legacy secured, baby. Love it. Next question is kind of on that same. It was on that same train of first edition versus unlimited. It has to do with distribution, but first, before we get to that, I want to ask you. It is still a little early to tell, but do you feel like the shift away from first edition to unlimited to the current system, the current print pattern or whatnot is working? Do you think it's successful? I particularly think it's good. I think that there's been a pretty good reception from the community, both the player base and the collector base. I think they're happy. Do you think that this is kind of a functional way to start printing cards in new sets?
It's absolutely the right decision for us at this point in time. So look, I think it's going to take some amount of time for the industry and for the community to realize the impact that it has. It might take a year, it might take more, but it's definitely the correct decision.
Great. And the other issue that this has been tossed my way by many, many people, especially, and look, I can only speak for those whom I was in contact with, but especially, again, intimately involved with some of the LGSs here in Canada. I mean, I love Harry Tarantula. I'm wearing their stuff right now, but I feel like there's distribution issues, and this has been sent my way by various different people across various different countries that distribution was an issue in before, because first edition came out, people bought it out and it was a problem, and then there was a chasm between buying that and having access to unlimited. This is different because now the stopgap, the issue, the speed bump rather, is that some of the smaller LGSs, I say smaller, but the brick and mortar mom and pop shop styles, the people who put their blood and sweat into those places are allocated, let's say, 12 to, maybe 10 cases and that might be even higher up, where others are getting 50 to 100 cases, and it's a distribution issue. And this isn't necessarily a criticism towards LSS, but is there anything in the works from LSS or any involvement that you guys can maybe, dip your toe into to sort of rectify or correct some of this discrepancy and add a little fairness? Because the sentiment I get, and that's being communicated to me, is that it's immensely challenging for stores that really, the heartbeat of the store is flesh and blood for the most part, but they can't support it because they're not getting product. And that, from what I'm hearing, is a distribution issue, whereas other stores, and not that these stores are bad stores, but they're getting 10 to 20 times the allocation when they're not even necessarily supporting armories or anything in that regard. Is there any thoughts that you have in terms of addressing this, or maybe getting involved and throwing some weight behind support for these smaller stores?
Yeah, like this is a really, really key issue for us at the moment, and I can tell you that we have a plan for addressing this going forward. It probably isn't gonna. We're past the point of no return for Uprising. Like what the allocations are is what they are for Wave One, but we're very aware that there's an issue here, and as we go forward with future releases, there's going to be much more input on the allocation process from LSS through to our distributors to get product into the market for release day. So one of the things that is going to be key for this is looking at the OP activity. So obviously we have the gem system, and we have all of that data for what stores are running OP and the frequency and the number of players in their local community. And then there's going to be pulled through to create those release date allocations, so that it is more the quantity of product that the stores are getting is more reflective of the size of their local community. Legion Store Shooters has account managers who are engaged with the stores every day. We've got an entire department of account managers, so we are very connected to the front line of the industry. We're getting the feedback from the stores. What you just explained to me, we know that this is happening. We know that it's an issue, and that's really the step that we're taking, is instead of passing over the decision of how release day stock is getting allocated, instead of passing that over to the distributor, we're basically going to be bringing this in-house for the next release and future releases, and providing that guidance to the distributors on where the stock needs to be to support release day.
Wonderful.
I can tell you that as far as the distribution goes, there are other challenges and constraints for Uprising in particular. I tell you, 100% of the stock which is in the US is out in the supply chain for release day. It's not like we're holding stock back. The distributors aren't holding stock back. Everything that is in the US is out. The difficulty is that upstream with our printers at Cartamundi, these guys have encountered some real difficulties with sourcing raw materials. You may have heard it in other parts of the industry as well. Paper supply has become a real constraint, and it has affected manufacturing, not only for fish and blood, but for other products in our category as well. And sometimes these things like the release date for Uprising is set, way in the past. And when you lock on things like a world premiere series around the world, it's and you've got venues booked under contract. It's not like you can just go and shift the release date of Uprising, by 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, to realign with things that happen in the manufacturing schedule because of, like paper supply all of a sudden gets disrupted, and it's like, oh well, there's been like a 3 week delay to stock coming off the line, at the factory. Like once contracts are in place for a world premiere, and it's like, okay, well, world premiere is here. Pre-release needs to be the week after, and the product needs to get into the stores for the week following that. Like you're just kind of like locked in, hard locked in. Um, and the consequences is that there just isn't as much uprising in the US and other parts of the world on at this point in time than we had forecast or expected or needed to be frank. So you are going to see constraints in the market all across the world when it comes to release day stock. And like I understand that some people are going to be frustrated, that some stores are going to be pissed, and I do apologize. And this is quite separate to the allocation issue, but um, like we work really really hard to manage the supply chain, and um, like it's somebody's full-time dedicated job to be doing that at LSS, and he works incredibly hard. He's a dude who's at the office at 5:30 in the morning every single day, Monday to Friday, and he busts his balls to get stuff around the world where he needs to be on time. But sometimes things are just outside your control, like paper not being available. Like you're a printer, you should have paper. Well, sometimes things happen where even a printer can't get paper or card stock. Um, so just like we're doing our best, and we know there's some issues, and we very much like the organized play thing of giving more lead time. It's one of our really key objectives at Legend Story Shooters at the moment is just trying to get more lead time in all areas of the business, including things like manufacturing and supply chain, so that we have even more buffer built in to accommodate for these kinds of disruptions that happen.
I don't think anybody's really doubting the fact that you guys work your ass off. And like you said, you guys bust your balls and really, put the time in. People coming in at 5:30 to make sure that things are working. The concern, I think a lot of people are maybe now realizing, something that I suspected for a while, is that you guys are, your success is almost detrimental to a degree, in the fact that you guys are growing like crazy. Are you guys, do you have that sort of victim of your own success kind of not mentality, but do you feel like perhaps this is just bigger than you anticipated it would be at this point? Is this just a matter of you guys are just trying to catch up to your own success?
Look, we always planned and intended for Flesh and Blood to become a global game. Like there was always the vision for this. So like we knew what we were getting ourselves in for, and we've like we have a plan. And one example is like trying to hire people ahead of the curve. It's like not waiting until things are so bad that you then try and like hire someone to like fill the hole. It's like we're actively out there with our roadmap of like trying to hire people in for these roles that are gonna evolve, and we're going to need like in the future to try and like front foot some of these issues. But things like supply chain management is again just so often these things are outside your control with just random stuff that happens. Yeah, some of these things you can plan for and you can foresee, and you can build in like buffer into your lead times and stuff like that. Sometimes it just blows out what your reasonable estimations are. Um, in some of these like key areas of running this business, like running a TCG company is really, really complex. Like there's so many elements that have to come together to make this thing hum from, obviously product design, manufacturing, supply chain, event delivery, um, working with your domestic distributors, marketing. Like there's just so many different elements that have to come together in sync to actually create a great experience for the end user. So it is complicated, but we have some brilliant people at Legend Story Studios. I'm very grateful and blessed to have some exceptional talent around me, people who have come from other paths in their career, quite different than mine. For example, one of my co-founders, he was a very very senior, um, had a very senior position at a company called Fonterra, which is New Zealand's biggest company. It's actually the biggest dairy company in the world, and like he comes from a background of understanding what it's like to build organizations that scale up to having thousands of employees, and having like supply chains that span the world. So like we have people who in our company who have like very rich experience in areas that I don't have, for my path, my career path to date. Um, so it's not like we don't know what to do or we don't know what needs to be done. it's just hard. Like the simple thing is just hard to do what we do. And in the most part, I think we're doing a lot of things really, really well. But we're also a group of people, especially the founders of Legend Story Studios, who are always looking for continuous improvement. To be honest, we're never particularly satisfied with anything that we do. We always see the flaws in the holes and the rough edges that we need to try and strive to improve as we go forward. Um, and I think that's really key for having any successful enterprises. Just that sense of, well, continuous improvement for sure, but like you can always do better. Like Uprising is a great product, but there's things that could even be better about that. Classic Battles was, well, people seem to like Classic Battles, but there's like major issues with Classic Battles that like we 100% need to address and improve as we go forward. And the same with our events, and the same with pretty much everything in this business. Just like that sense of just dissatisfaction that we should be doing better and we can be doing better, and we're going to strive to do better. Um, yeah, that's
No, that's fine. Well, that's a lot of people need to understand that. I mean, it's not clear cut, right? And it's easy to criticize or whatnot. But again, the fact that you guys are working on things is always a good stuff. The fact, like, because it's easy to say, like, "Wait, listen, we're doing what we're doing. Trust us." But like the fact that you're able to, elaborate on this is it's good for the community to understand that, you guys are aware of flaws and pitfalls and such, but in continuous improvement that you guys are constantly striving for is how things get fixed. So we definitely appreciate that. You mentioned earlier cosplay, seeing new characters like Fi and new heroes that are being represented already. In Las Vegas, seeing the cosplay that was there. First of all, the individual who did the Guinness What You Need was incredible. That was amazing. I know you saw that one. That was brilliant. I also spent a lot of days of the weekend hanging out with Elaine Hammondtree, who did Icelander. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
She's awesome. She's awesome. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about cosplay and the culture of it. And I know that you were very much more involved on socials. You kind of were, hidden away a little bit when it comes to social media and such. But this entire weekend, people were coming up to me and just mentioning things like, God, James commented on my thing. I'm like, James cares, man. James paying attention. He loves it, and especially the cosplay stuff. How do you react to seeing your characters being portrayed in such amazing ways in the flesh and blood, as it were? These characters like Icelander, like Guinness, like Fi, the new ones. What's your reaction to seeing them come to life?
Just love it. It's incredible, and just the quality of the cosplaying that's coming through is just outstanding. It's just incredible. Like I literally had a meeting yesterday talking about how we probably need to be putting more in the pot for rewarding these cosplayers, because the first of all, the number of people who are cosplaying and just the overall quality of the cosplaying is um, just really exceptional. It's above and beyond I think we expected when we set out to um, you know really acknowledge the cosplay community. They've stepped up and delivered.
In terms of the impact of what this means for the events, the cosplayers who are showing up to support the event, a lot of it is part of the allure of going to event going to event live and playing it. You mentioned that this is something that you want to further support. Are you trying to integrate cosplay as more of like an official aspect of the card game itself? Is this sort of something that you want to have almost equal footing along with the card events themselves? Is this something that you want to really pump the tires on and be a focal point, as much as a draft event is, as much as a battle hardened is? Is this something that you're going to want to eventually see almost even on an even keel?
I think it's important that we respect the spirit of cosplay being something which is fun and expressive and not like competitive. So I am mindful about that. I think just it adds to the experience of being at an event. And um, but what we do want to do is just better acknowledge the fact that like a lot of people are putting in a lot of time to create these cosplay experiences for people. And at the moment, yeah, like the way that we're sort of I guess administering the rewards for that probably needs, well, it's not as good as it could be. So there's going to be some changes around that, including just a little bit more, or a lot more visibility over sort of you know when we're how what criteria we're looking for when we're actually giving out the tailors, for example, or other prizing and acknowledgements. Um, but yeah, like I just I don't want it to turn into something which is like this competitive thing sitting alongside like a competitive, calling TCG event. Like that's not the point of it. It's supposed to be fun.
So moving forward, the Living Legend system, we've finally seen, it being populated. Bravo, star of the show, is in there. You've got Viserai, Chain is in there as well. Is after, it's been a year and a half, 2 years or so, the heroes are finally attaining the top of the mountain. Is in your estimation, is it working as intended? Is Living Legend, does it need any revisions, any adjustments? Is Living Legend kind of performing and working the way that you envisioned it would?
I think it's too early to really see it in action, right? Like we're about to farewell our first two heroes from Classic Constructed, and um, like we'll see over the next season how that actually flows through to metagames and tournament experiences. But yeah, absolutely, the intention of it is to like celebrate and farewell whatever the best performing hero was from a format, and for that to like refresh what the meta games are to allow new strategies and new heroes to rise to the top. So I would say that fundamentally, yes, it is working as intended. It acted as a safety valve for Starvo, for example, and we're saying goodbye to Starvo on the 24th of June, and Chain, just he was obviously a lot slower in his progression to Living Legend, but Chain as a hero put up consistently impressive results over the span of a year and a bit, a year and a half. So yeah, look, it is functioning how it was intended to function. The way that the points are being allocated, is that perfect? Maybe, maybe not. It's something that we're keeping an eye on and we're reviewing, and we'll see how things sort of pan out over the coming seasons. And there might be some adjustments that need to be implemented just around how points are allocated. Um, Particularly as the volume of events that can award Living Legend points continues to scale up across the world. Just like the number of new stores that are signing up, every week is yeah, it's incredible. Dozens of stores signing up every week, dozens and dozens and dozens, um, and just the number of events which make up these seasons, whether it's Road to Nationals, Pro Quest, or skirmish events, like all of these programs, just the volume of events it continues to rise as well. And um, again, like coming back to looking at a longer view for what organized play looks like in 2023, for example, as we sit down and just start nailing in, like where are the callings, how many callings, how many of the premier level events, how many battle hardens, like what are the pro tours looking like? Once we get like a firm handle on, that framework going up 12 or so months, we'll be able to better understand, well, how does that then flow back through to Living Legend points, and like making some forecasts and estimations on how many of heroes will actually leave the format relative to how many are like being introduced through product releases. So there's like quite a bit of complexity. It's certainly a system that has quite a high level of complexity to it. But I think when you like take away the complexity and you think about it at its like most fundamental level, the point of it is to remove the most powerful heroes from the format so that a new batch, a new wave of heroes can like rise to the top. And it is doing that, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward.
The other question about Living Legends, real quickly, is that I'm imagining that there was an intention to have Living Legend as a format in itself. And if that's the case, how many heroes is the minimum for you to start firing off that as an actual format?
Well, if we look back at Welcome to Wraith when it first came out, like there was 4 heroes, and in my view, like that was a great format. Like there was a lot of play to that with only 4 heroes. So I think that would probably be the minimum benchmark. But yeah, like we'll have more information about when Living Legends, like as a format, kicks off proper in the coming months. It's
Wonder-
definitely a thing though, and we're looking forward to it.
Wonderful. The other thing that I want to just tap into real quick is future events that are not necessarily calling style events. We talked about team events being awesome, but you and I have discussed a little bit, and I know that this is something that I've beat the drum on, is show matches or invitational style, like, those kinds of fun events that are not necessarily about prestige, but are more so about just showing off the game and having fun. Themes, fun locations, fun rule sets, the spectators, and things of that nature. Is this something that's on the radar? What can we possibly expect in terms of non-calling style, fun show match style events?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I have a vision to host an invitational in New Zealand. New Zealand's a beautiful country. There's some incredible tourist stuff to do here, but it's just so far away from the rest of the world. Like having the World Championship or a Pro Tour in New Zealand is just like too much of an ask for travelers, especially from Europe, to come all the way down. Even from North America, it's a very long trip. So it's what I think is appropriate to put in New Zealand is something like an invitational, a showcase event, um, and to really lean into the New Zealand experience, and that's something that I want to happen. Is going to happen. It's, it's on the roadmap. I don't want to talk too much about it at the moment, but I can tell you it's on the roadmap, and that's probably the first such example of this exhibition style event that you'll see come through.
Awesome.
Stay tuned.
Hopefully wrestling themed. We'll see. The last little piece of discussion before we get to some of the listener questions is Worlds. Worlds is on everyone's radar. I know that it was discussed at the Pro Tour that it would be held in North America. Everybody is so jazzed about it because in my estimation, and in a lot of people's opinion as well, this is essentially the top of the mountain when it comes to competitive Flesh and Blood. People are looking at this and saying, yeah, Pro Tour is Pro Tour, but being a world champion is in itself quite the crown to have on your head. So the question here, James, is can you give us any more information about specifically where the event will be held in North America, and finally the format? And just to expand a little bit on the format, Dave Rude, a Pro Tour player, great person, mentioned that really, frankly, if you really want to crown the best player, the format should be mixed. It should be limited and classic constructed, and I tend to agree in that regard. And I think that if you really want to decide who is the real best Flesh and Blood player, that a draft element should be mixed in there as well. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It nearly certainly is going to be a hybrid format. Look, back in my younger years when I used to travel the world, play the game and see the world, I got to play it at Magic World Champs on a number of occasions, and those events were typically three formats, two different constructed formats, and then booster draft. And if you were part of the national team, you got to do teams draft as well. So four formats over 5 days. I have very fond memories of that kind of gameplay. So yeah, look, I agree that if you are the best of the best, then you need to demonstrate it across all of the major formats that exist in the game, and that's sort of the intention for World Champs. And there'll be details posted pretty soon about when and where World Champs is going to be and the formats.
Perfect. But we're kind of aiming for like November, December, right? It's an end of the year kind of extravaganza.
It's November. November. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, James, that does it for sort of our little more in-depth discussion. I've got some questions from the viewers. I hope you'll stick around for a little bit.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, quick fire. Let's do it, man.
Let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, BCW Supplies is again sponsoring the Instant Speed podcast, and I just spent a wonderful weekend in Las Vegas on my team, BCW Rick, GG Doa, the most wonderful teammates. We did pretty good, not gonna lie, but you know what? We also had protection against the scary environmental damage and those greasy fingers you got in Vegas when you're playing your cards. So use BCW Supplies to go ahead and protect your cards. Go to bcwsupplies.com, use the code ISP10. That'll get you 10% off your order, all your orders. So those card sleeves, those deck boxes, how about comic books? Got some on the wall, they're protected over there with nice little hard cases, etc., vinyls, coins, the whole 9 yards. bcwsupplies.com. Protect, store, display. All right, this is the go again section, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to cram as many as I can. Again, we got over 150 people who have essentially thrown questions my way. A lot of them were very similar. I'm going to do my best to cover as many bases. If I did not get to your question, I sincerely apologize, friends, but it is what it is. So here is the first question. This one is coming from Roger, a Patreon member of the Instant Speed Podcast, so thank you, Roger. This one says, my question for James would be, why are there still no good generic legendary arms or legs after 2 supplemental sets? So, you know, you've got Tunic, you've got Skullcap, but no legs or arms that are really good all the way through. Is there any sort of, you know, feedback you can give us on that?
Patience.
Patience is it's a good answer. All right. We've got Jim from @FAB Cards asking, I'd love to know if they have anything planned to help it reinvigorate the armory scene. And he goes on to explain that it's hard to get newer players to stick around because the players who do typically just skyrocket in terms of skill set, and the armory scene is dwindling. Is this something on your radar? How would you approach this?
I would like to know what local store they're experiencing that in. The data that I see is the Armory program is thriving majoritively across the world. But like I would say that, you know, we've just come off, you know, like the Stavo back-to-back seasons of Classic Constructed. You know, he was very dominant, and maybe some people are just like over that, and that's about to reset. We've got Uprising coming out, and you know, Stavo saying goodbye. So you know, maybe people feel inspired to come back and play with a brand new, fresh format. I would say that products like Classic Battles are an incredible tool for welcoming new players into the community, including at Armory events. But yeah, look, what we're seeing across the board is Armory events are growing and are continuing to. So yeah, maybe he can reach out to us, op@fabtg.com, and let us know what store it is that needs some specific support here.
Definitely. Jim's a great guy, a Patreon member as well, but somebody I've met and hung out with this weekend. So thank you very much, Jim. This one coming from, you know, DM Armada, Stephen Cookus, wonderful person. First of all, the obligatory pirate question, is it coming, is it not? But we can just skip over that, James. Screw that. But the question here is, what card or cards are you most proud of?
It's really impossible to answer that question, and if we're looking at the entirety of Flesh and Blood, but if we just let's narrow the scope down and just say what cards am I most proud of from Uprising, because that one's pretty easy. It's the Dragons, the Marvels, the or the Invocations, and just yeah, how I was able to actually execute on my desire to get dragons into our game, but in a way that honors the fact that Flesh and Blood is primarily a game of, you know, like human or human-like interaction and combat. And I think that the way that Invocations, you know, I was able to design and execute them is just really elegant. There's a lot of constraints with bringing allies into the game, just in terms of how our cards are templated. Like, for example, if it was a single-sided card and you just played the dragon out from your hand, like now it doesn't have defense value. Like in the bottom right corner where a defense would be, it's like it has the dragon's life. And like, yeah, sure, we could hack up the card frame and it could, you know, have like a life and a defense symbol next to it, but then things start looking ugly and it's just all a bit of a mess. Like I can tell you, we've explored these sorts of things. So like being able to create this interesting and flavorful interaction where, you know, we've got Dromai, who's an ash artist, who's able to create these ashes and then transform them into dragons, and for that to be the invocation moment, like she's invoking the dragon, and then when she completes the invocation, like the dragon appears, and that's like you flipping over the card on resolution, and you get the best of both worlds of having these like cards in your deck that you can actually defend with. But when you play them, they like flip into the dragon, and you have the life points. And it also meant that we could basically, have we've got two sides of the card to work with in terms of text box. So it meant that the dragons could become marvels because they didn't have like this much text in the box. They had this much, and we could do the beautiful, full art frames on them.
Those are beautiful cards. Next question is from Jimmy James from Twitter asking, can we expect a 5 intellect hero anytime soon?
I don't know about anytime soon, but like it's nearly certain eventually there'll be a 5 intellect hero. Like we've done a 3 intellect hero, for better or worse. But yeah, like it's always an interesting area of design, playing around with these, base stats on the cards. And 5 intellect comes with a whole bunch of challenges, and we've explored this area somewhat over the years, but we're not at a place where we want to release that into the wild yet.
This one's coming from Taylor Morrow on Twitter asking, is the 3 hero limited sets the standard moving forward? And I know that a lot of the discussion, again, is you and I spoke a bit about the whole digging into and sleuthing out of whether there was a 4th hero in Uprising, which I guess now we've figured out it was not. But
that was fun following that thread through before the previous season for sure. All of the conspiracy theories and speculation. I do enjoy watching the community come up with these ideas, and there were some really good ideas there as well, particularly the Shiana one. But yeah, look, this is actually a very deep question, and we should push that one to a future podcast, Matt, because there's a lot to talk to on that point.
I like that. We'll skip through a few here. One of them, this one's from Kevin Bray, or another Patreon member, asking, what is the timeline for transitioning the use of ELO for events? And I know that ELO and such is something for Pro Tour that has been asked a lot. So just can you just talk a little bit about the implementation of ELO for Pro Tour?
The reason why we haven't been awarding invitations to the Pro Tour, based on ELO, is that ELO just isn't very accessible in a lot of parts of the world, which is why we've expanded the use of ELO over to the in-store programs like Road2Nationals and ProQuest. It's just simply to make it accessible. So once we feel like the majority of the world has actually had a reasonable chance to access ELO, then we'll be able to transition over to ELO-based invites for the Pro Tour.
Wonderful. 2 more. This one's coming from Collision Point Podcast asking, this one was quite lengthy, and it was a lot of effort put into this one. I said I would have to sort of boil this down. Ultimately, the boil down of this question is that when you're designing a card, you basically have a sort of a formula, as it were, for evaluating the worth of it, whereas a 0 cost, 4 attack, 2 or 3 defense is kind of like the run-of-the-mill for a red. In this case, does such a formula necessarily exist when it comes to things like implementing a go again, or other kind of on hit effects in that, or card draw, etc.? Is there a formula that you kind of adhere to or use as a framework when designing cards, that certain keywords have a particular amount of value to them, attack value, defense value, pitch, cost, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, as a very simplistic baseline, like go again is worth about 2 resource points. So if you look at a card like Leg Tap compared to Critical Strike, Critical Strike is a 1 cost 5/5/3. Leg Tap is a 1 cost 4/2 that has go again. So you're giving up the point of power, the point of defense, as your 2 your 2 inputs worth of value to get you a go again. So yeah, we do have a cost to power, defense, and effect matrix or distribution table that sets the baseline for the game system, and then sort of things like generally sit within that and sometimes rise above or dip below depending on what class it is and other complex factors.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes that it could be easy, but ultimately it's not straightforward. I would imagine that if it's just a formula, eventually you're going to run out of variables and everything's going to look the same. Last one, James. This one's from Gabe Scher, from Local Scene over here, asking a very good question here. are there any rules or principles of game design specific to Flesh and Blood or otherwise that you've learned during your lifetime designing Flesh and Blood that you didn't have when you started out? So skill sets or concepts that kind of came to you in the design process from that weren't there from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, this comes back to my point before of just continuous improvement, and like just this sense that we can always get better. Like I'm learning stuff every day. Like I learned something awesome just a couple of days ago that I hadn't thought about before. When we were designing the product that's coming out next year, and like if you're not learning all the time, like you're doing something wrong, and like you just as soon as you start thinking that you know everything, you're just setting yourself up to fail as well. But like I will say, like I didn't go to university to become a game designer, right? Like I played games for like 15 years or whatever, or maybe yeah, probably like 15 years of just like playing like a lot of Magic mostly, but a lot of different trading card games over that time. And then decided I wanted to make Flesh and Blood. And like I've said this on other interviews, like Flesh and Blood started out as a piece of shit. Like the game was terrible, and we had to overcome so many challenges with the game system that we thought were insurmountable. And but we did it. Like the important thing is that I'm a very determined person. Like just you gotta explore and experiment and push yourself in different directions to try and solve problems and just not give up. You like there were times when I thought this is not fixable, this is insurmountable. Like maybe some people would have thrown in the towel, but I just never did. I just was determined that we were going to make this thing work. And I spent 10,000 hours, more than 10,000 personal hours before Welcome to Wraith was released to develop the game system. And most of the time, there just isn't any substitute for actually just putting in the time and doing the work to make something great. Like that's just the process. Um, but yeah, like I'm learning stuff all the time, man, just all the time. Maybe a recent example of it is actually the classic battles. Like their product is very, very deliberately designed. And some people who are advanced players might look at that and be like, what the hell is the point of titanium bauble? Or why do you have sharpened steel and then I think it's on guard, which is like the same as sharpened steel, but a cost one. Like, what the hell is going on there? Like, the card's strictly worse. Yes, the card is strictly worse on purpose. And the reason why is because Classic Battles is supposed to be a product which is uh, supporting the first play experience. And when you're facing down someone attacking you and you're looking at your hand and you're like, I have sharpened steel or I have on guard, and on guard does the same thing but it costs more. It's strictly worse in every way. It makes it really easy to decide what card to defend with. I'm going to defend with the worst card. It's the same with Titanium Bauble. Like Titanium Bauble only does two things: it defends or it pitches. Like you don't have to start factoring in all these other like variables of what the card could potentially do. And when you're comparing Titanium Bauble to any other blue card in your deck that defends for 3, Titanium Bauble is strictly worse than every other instance of a blue defend for 3. And it becomes really easy to decide what you should defend with in that situation. So that was probably quite a recent piece of discovery and learning for me, was like actually switching my mindset from this fallacy of thinking that we can never make strictly worse cards to actually realizing that making strictly worse cards has a very specific application which has value, which is supporting new players in particular to be able to better and more easily evaluate their hand when deciding what card to defend with.
Well, James, I sincerely appreciate your time and everything and your candor here. And I have to do this as I do anytime someone's in the know with things. And call me greedy, but is there any kind of little tidbit of leaky information that you can kind of drop on us here? Something that I need that clickbait title. Come on, James, you got to drop us a little bit of a throw me a bone here, buddy. Come on, anything that you can just toss to us here.
Instead of FAB 2.0, like we're doing a lot more to integrate our storytelling with the product. And one of the things that I'm really proud about with Uprising into Dynasty is that you get to carry the story arc across. You get to carry the story arc across, and you're going to see this play out in quite an interesting way. It's our best immersion of lore into gameplay and product design yet. To continue that arc across and carrying the arc from Dynasty into what happens in 2023 is also pretty hot. So, like, we're getting a lot better at integrating story arc into product, and I think that players are going to love it. And that's your hot take.
That's my hot take.
The product name. Done.
What was it called?
You're gonna have to go back and watch your video.
All right. Dynasty.
You just
is it
like
is
you
it
missed
Dynasty?
it. You missed it. I got you.
I did. I was just so intrigued. In my head, like the one thing that got honestly just rapid fire, just full on Legolas the whole way through was, what's the next hero? What's the next hero? What class is the next hero? And I'm like, guys, I've been trying to squeeze this out of James like forever, and I don't think he's gonna relent here at how steadfast he is, unless you just want to drop a hot take on us here and tell us what one of the next heroes is gonna be, like what class. But maybe.
Oh no! Well, your turn.
Yeah, I know.
Patience. Bring me back on the show, and then maybe we'll talk about it.
Deal. All right, we'll lock that one in. James, thank you so much for everything, my friend. Get some rest,
You're
brother.
welcome,
you're awesome, and more so than just obviously like. Thank you for the game, but honestly, thank you again for just being a good dude and your friendship and everything, because it does sincerely mean a lot to me and to everybody out there.
Likewise.
And we'll definitely talk soon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. James White on the Instant Speed podcast, and we'll definitely do this again soon.
Thank you, Matt, and see you in Leo. Looking forward to it.
Damn right. Friends, don't forget, you are not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the game. We'll see you next time on the Instant Speed podcast.
Well,